I know, I rely on the kindness of strangers too. Go to the next one. We'll start quick. You got it. Okay. So, like I said, we're going to go real quick. The National Flood Insurance Program, it's basically 3 sections there: maps, regs, and stuff, and insurance, and we'll go real quick. So there's a quick overview. This, and we all know this living in New England, again, in the 1700s, to the 1940s, you know, we were all about controlling nature. We were building a nation. So you see a lot of the remnants of that especially in New England. Mills on rivers, we needed it for power, fishing, maritime. There was a lot of federal legislation, you know, in the 1800s, early 1900s about draining swamps, the WPA, Flood Controls Act. So we kind of, that was the gist. Okay, go ahead, next slide, Chris. So everything kind of changed in 1965 with Hurricane Betsy. That hit the Gulf Coast, kind of where Katrina hit, if you are a lover of history. What woke people up was that it was the first $1 billion storm. So in 65, that's a lot of money, $1 billion, right? So people started saying, you know, we got to do something different here. This whole trying to control nature isn't really working. Go ahead, Chris, next. So it wasn't just this storm. In Connecticut, if you remember, there was Connie and Diane hurricanes in 55. Those are like a lot of record, especially upstate, you know, in the like Torrington area, that kind of stuff. A lot of flood control projects were built after that, but it was a bunch of these storms that said, you know, we have to kind of look toward regulation, wise planning, land use. So that would fits in with you guys. So that's what this act of 1968 Flood Insurance Act established, National Flood Insurance Program. Okay, next slide, please. Again, the people call it the three-legged stool. So there's 3 components. Flood, and we're going to touch on each one of these. And if you want to stop me anywhere along the line, if something gets confusing, just go for it. You know, stop me and we can have a little session here of questions. Flood maps are made by FEMA in conjunction with the community. Flood regulations are also, again, the minimum is established by FEMA. It's in the Code of Federal Regulations. It's in 44 CFR 60.3. And to participate, a town has to adopt at least that minimum into either a zoning ordinance or a zoning regulation. And then insurance. So FEMA also makes federally regulated insurance available to those people in those communities who want it or need it for a mortgage, and we'll go into that a little bit more later. Go ahead, Chris, next one. So this is just the general roles and responsibilities, so you understand and where you really do fit into this, and it's actually quite important. The state is like, that's me off to the side in the green. So I'm like a liaison. I'm a helper. Find the helpers, says Mr. Rogers. I'm here to help residents, but mostly town officials and design professionals with questions and training like this and other things. So the relationship with FEMA from the town is really a direct one. You are adopting their maps and their studies, and you're kind of promising to them that you're going to regulate development. So it's important. Next slide, Chris.
I just got bumped.
No.
Talking.
We get through 2 slides and we're done. You want me to see if I can share my screen? Would that help?
Yeah,
See if
sure.
Yes, we're having problems.
I'm going to give it a whirl. I could see what happens. I'm scared. Let's see what happens.
We can hear you.
There you go.
Is that something?
Yep.
Yeah, you got it here.
Oh my, look at me. See if I can do it. Or I did that one. How's that? Can you see it?
Yeah, yeah.
All right, well, we're just gonna keep going then like this. I should have done it that way to begin with. See, I'm always nervous. I'm gonna screw it up. So I'm just gonna concentrate a minute on local, because you're the people. You're the local people who and Chris and Tom, Wiki, and everybody else at Town Hall. And you are really the most important people in this whole thing, because you are regulating development, permitting development, inspecting it, remedying violations all at the local level. So this is my little pep talk or whatever you want to call it. I know sometimes it's not easy. I know sometimes it's hard to tell residents no. Believe me, I have to do it too. But the program is there for protecting life and property, and also getting both the town, the state, and the country, if we have these disasters, back on its feet quicker, faster, and that's what it's all about. So I know it's difficult to manage the expectations of residents in these locations. So, but again, what you do is extremely important, and I thank you for that. So now we do maps, quick, again, flood maps and studies. So they're actually called flood insurance rate maps, not just flood maps, that's the real name. Again, it's a product of something called a flood insurance study. It's a booklet, you see a little picture on the side there. Flood maps are all engineering. So that's one thing I wanted to make sure you understood. I know sometimes they get mixed up with wetlands maps. Wetlands maps are developed based on soil types, poorly drained soils. You know, a soil scientist goes out and flags everything. So that's another thing to be careful of when applicants come in. Are they showing you the right map? Are they using the right map for regulation? Because the two areas can overlap, but they're different. So flood maps are made by engineering. People go out, surveyors, and are surveying waterways, and we'll see that in a second. Again, who's using these? You'll see it: surveyors, lenders, you guys, residents, design professionals. So there's this, like I said, there's a study. If I hit this again, it's going to show you kind of like, and you can go find this. It's either in town hall, and I'll show you where to find it online. It's all the engineering data that's gathered. Well, I'm going to hit this again. Hopefully it works. It did. And that is then put into like a pictorial map format. Okay, so there's lots of data that goes behind these maps. I only mention that to you because, again, being the Planning and Zoning Commission, where people are giving you applications, you know, this is something you could be asking them to make sure. And I know Chris is doing this, and Jeff Jacobson, your town engineer, is careful. But just so you understand, there is backup data, you know, with these maps, and that's what's going into feeding into them to make them. So this is a river profile, this little graph. Okay, so it's like you're looking at a river sideways, the bottom, and then how high the flood heights are. And then there's all kinds of graphs. So this is a 100-year floodplain. So this is a riverine floodplain, and we'll get to coastal in a minute. So if you were Kent or somebody, I wouldn't even talk about coastal. Two sections, two parts, really, in the floodplain. The floodway, the middle, a channel, where that's where the 100-year flood is going to be, and it has to be open to pass that flood. So think of the Connecticut River, think of a smaller tributary. And then the sides, the flood fringe, although no one really calls it the flood fringe, we just call it the floodplain, but that's where people are usually building something. So that's where you have on the side there, it says BFE, base flood elevation. That's a certain height where they predict the water's going to go in a 100-year event. So again, this is also a misnomer you should dispel to people, and people are trying to get away from the 100-year flood. 100-year flood is like the Powerball number coming out. You can keep picking number 5, you know, if you keep doing it 3 separate times, or you could never pick number 5. And it's the same thing with the 100-year flood. We could have 3 in a row. You can have one, you know, it doesn't happen for 150 years. It's a probability. It's a statistic. It's not, you get a lot of people who say, well, we had a 100-year flood in Sandy and I'm good and I'll be dead before I, you know, type of thing. That's not true. So when you hear people say that, again, manage your expectation, I guess is what I'm trying to say. This is a riverine, inland flood map. So you're going to see, and it's not the best picture. I'm sorry about that. It's a little, they're in color now. But what I wanted to show you at least was it's got an aerial photograph underneath. Again, not the best picture here. Yours are better. But you can see landmarks. And you've got 2 kinds of flood zones. On the bottom, you've got just something called a zone A. So anything inland is going to have an A in front of it. That's your flood zone. And it's going to be blue like this. Or sometimes you'll see kind kind of a brown, that's a 500-year floodplain, but usually anything blue is what you're going to be focused on. So in the bottom there, you've got a zone A. It just means it's kind of done it with an approximate method. There's no base flood elevation or BFE attached to it. The top one is a more studied river. You could see all the little lines. Those are called cross sections. So I'm going to go back. So if you could, there's a little, I don't know if you can see it. There's a little like a hexagon with a letter in it. So if we go back, I know I'm going back now. You want to go forward. See all the little letters in the chart? Those are data points that correspond to what's on the map. And that also corresponds to what's on the profile on the bottom. So all those are data points that somebody went out and surveyed. So have detailed measurements, detailed base flood elevations, I guess is what I'm trying to say. All right, so we'll move on here. So now we're going to go to a coastal area. Now this is not a map, this is more of a pictogram that I wanted to give you first to get your kind of bearings. So going from the left side of the screen to the right, is left is Long Island Sound, pretend, and you're walking up the beach, right? So you start in, so VE zone, V stands for velocity, E is elevation. So if we go back one, up here you had an AE zone, riverine. Again, A is just means not in the coast. E is elevation. So here we are on the coast. So we're going up the beach. So you have a velocity zone, wave action, waves that are 3 feet high. Once a 3-foot wave breaks, it turns into an A zone. And so now on the map, we have a coastal A zone. So it's still got some wave action, a little bit less than 3 feet, 3 feet to 1.5 feet, 105, sorry, 1.5. So again, enough wave action. And then again, this is because as you're going up away from the sound, you're gaining elevation. So this can be different everywhere. There are some places, say down in Fairfield County, you know, you have bigger zones. You go toward, say, New London, you have a smaller V zone. It just depends on the elevation of the site, what you're hitting. More elevation, then you get into another AE zone. So this is very similar to the AE riverine zone it's treated like, even though it's on the coast. Okay, then you go more, and then you get into an X zone, you're out of the zone. One thing to be very conscious of here is on the top of the graph here, it says LIMWA, LIMWA. That stands for limit of moderate wave action. So that's kind of a zone break between where FEMA's saying there's waves. So the waves, you know, the VE and the AE, coastal AE zone. And then like, that's where they, even though there's waves back there, but they're less than 1.5 feet. So they kind of make it and you'll see why that's important in a little bit. Okay, but just keep that in your mind, what LIMWA is. Then we're going to do it a little bit more. So limit of moderate wave action. Why, and this is, if you want to know where this is New Haven Harbor. Now my phone's ringing, of course. I'm sorry, hold on. Somebody's going to answer that for me and get rid of that person. Anyway, all right, so New Haven Harbor, this is like where the oil tanks are, where the Q bridge is. So just for your orientation. So you're looking down on this. This is basically a flood map. So, sorry, hold on a second. Thanks. Okay, sorry, somebody had to answer the phone here. This is New Haven Harbor. It's showing you, again, if you can see it, I hope you can. It says V zone toward where the harbor is, and as you're going back, it turns into an A zone. This is also showing you the limit of moderate wave action line. This is a viewer that FEMA made for us because sometimes on the actual flood maps, it's hard to see them. Why is this important? In October of 2018, the state building code changed and treated A zones, coastal AE zones in that LIMWA line, and V zone, like a V zone for construction. You'll see where that's important in a little bit farther down the presentation. Coastal barriers. So I only mention this because there are some in Fenwick and there are some in Old Saybrook. Usually these are areas like Audubon societies, land trusts, sometimes state parks. They're usually wetlands, bird sanctuaries, that kind of junk. Not junk, important things, but you know, not buildable land that you normally build on. The only reason I say this is because if you look on the map, flood insurance cannot be sold in any of these areas for new buildings. Older buildings that have been there a long time. A lot of times they're very, they're Autobahn-y type things that are not real, intensive development. The only reason I mentioned is every once in a while, you will get a house that kind of is near one of these zones or in one of these zones. And the applicant will come to you and say, oh, I'm in one of these zones. And so you can't touch me. You have no regulation of me. All it means is they can't sell you insurance there. So they are doing it at their own risk for either insurance and also kind of like disaster assistance. But your land use powers still apply. I just wanted to bring that up because you do have these areas in town. I don't think you have structures there. But I bring it up because you'll hear it. Where can you find these maps? I'm assuming they're definitely probably in town hall. I'm sure Chris covets them every day.
More in the land use office. The lockbox.
The lockbox. Many times say that because people make off with them. And they're hard to, and you can reprint them. But if you want to look at them digitally, you go to this website. And again, don't write it all down. Just Google FEMA Map Service Center or FEMA Maps. It'll bring it to the website. You can do it by address. So if you want to type in any address in the United States, bang, bang, bang. You can do it by state, county, town. So if you wanted to do it that way, if you knew where you were. So if you want to just go to Old Saybrook's, you're going to see your coastal maps, your inland panels. You're going to see historic old maps. You're going to see studies, you can see old studies. And again, if you're looking for Fenwick, they have their own maps. So it's going to be listed under Fenwick, not under Old Saybrook, because they have separate zoning. And that's how that's broken out. Projects, just so you know what's coming down the pipe. FEMA's doing quite a number of watershed studies in the state. One is Lower Connecticut River. So you should be getting actually draft work maps supposedly this May. Draft, not final. First cut draft. So again, you say May, it might be the summer, it might actually be the fall. So just take that with a grain of salt. There's also an erosion study occurring. We were the last state out of all of them. It's non-regulatory, it's just for planning, but you might be interested in that. And the last one is they are going to be starting a new coastal remapping study, supposedly this year in New England. So, again, maps wouldn't be for a long time, but just so you understand that maps are always changing, okay? Or could change in the future. It's not a static product. Okay, now we're going to do regulations. Any questions on maps before we go further? No? Okay, cool. I know everyone hates regulations, right? And that's why you're on the Planning and Zoning Commission. But again, I say it from before, the goal of the program really is to prevent damage, minimize damage, and also, protect life and property, right? A flood zone is a dangerous location. It's an environmentally sensitive location. And I know it's a tough, especially in a coastal town. Again, it's hard because residents want to do what they want to do, right? But again, the goal is to, when we do have these storms, is that people are getting back on their feet quicker. It's less cost to the town and the state and the country, and less cost to the residents, right? Everybody wants to get back up and running. For example, right now, there are people in Florida after that hurricane who are sitting in tents on slabs where their houses were, and that happens when we have bad storms for years to put things back together. Even after Sandy, it took a long time for us to put things back together, and it wasn't as bad as that. So what are the regs trying to kind of manage, I'm going to call it, flood forces. So there's a lot of forces happening on a structure when you have a flood. Hydrostatic, hydrodynamics. Hydrostatic is like the weight of water on a building. Hydrodynamic is pull, like the water pushing a building off its foundation. Buoyancy, the one you always use is the coffin coming up, but things float, right? Think like an aircraft carrier, it floats. I know, right? But think of an aircraft carrier. An aircraft carrier is really heavy, but it floats. Think like things can come up. Debris impact, there's a lot of junk in the water, wave action, storm surge, velocity. We already talked about that, little scour, erosion, and undermining. So again, water is going to I would assume in a coastal town, you've seen this all over the place, seawalls, things undermined, water's gonna go where it wants to go. And then water is also really dirty. People for some reason think, oh, it's just water gonna come in and then it's gonna go out. It's the dirtiest thing in the world. The cleanup of a flood, and I'm sure some of you gone through it, being from Old Saybrook, is a nasty business. It's not something you want to do twice. So that's what it's trying to regulate. Again, believe it or not, all towns in Connecticut participate in this program. We're one of the few states, again, because we're a small state. I think Rhode Island and Delaware are the other two. Again, think Maine, out west. They have a lot of unincorporated land that doesn't really belong to a town. So, whatever. But so you have to have either a zoning regulation or an ordinance. Old Saybrook has an ordinance, and you could do it either way, it doesn't matter. Next, let's see here. Get rid of that. Again, permits. You can permit it as long as you're doing a permit of some kind. You can do it any way you want, and towns do it all kinds of different ways. They do it through a zoning permit, a development permit. Some do it a building permit. Some do a separate floodplain permit. Doesn't really matter as long as somehow it's in there. However you want to do it. They don't really prescribe to you how to do it correctly. So now we're at this is what the regs are written. This is for a riverine location, usually, or one of those coastal locations that's back a little bit, okay? This is the normal thing that you're gonna see. This is called wet floodproofing. So what are the regs trying to do here? They're trying to relieve that hydrostatic pressure on the bottom of the foundation. So you'll see this a lot. What it is flood vents. So that bottom layer is like a garage, an unfinished garage, unheated garage. And there's all these little flood vents in the foundation, and water is allowed to come in. And I know a lot of people hate it. I don't want water in my house, right? They cringe. But the whole point of it is that the water is going to equalize on both sides, and it's not going to either crush it or push it off its foundation because it's going to equalize. You need 1 square inch of venting for every square foot of space down there, not the top, just the bottom, anything below that flood elevation. And I said base flood elevation plus 2 feet because that's what Old Saybrook uses. Okay, you'll see in a little bit the state building code only requires 1 foot. So that's called freeboard. So it's like a safety factor. It's not a bad thing to do. A lot of coastal towns do it. And a lot of it is, again, you'd want that for map revisions. You'd want that for, again, safety factor. Storms that are higher than the predicted, model standard that FEMA used, climate change, sea level rise stuff. So, okay. So again, it's not that you can't use that bottom layer, parking, storage, put your lawn and furniture down there. You just can't live down there. It can't be a heated, finished space, no bathroom. Okay. Because again, it's going to flood, right? And if it is flooding, you want to get your junk out of there. Okay, inland location, non-residential. They can do that dry flood proofing. And if I go back one, I should mention this too. I forgot that one. On the bottom, it says, you can elevate on fill if possible. I don't think many people do it because then there's also a compensatory storage requirement where they have to kind of balance that fill in an inland location. But that is a possibility. So those are 2 options there, right? And then we got a third one here. So this is just for a commercial building. And the reason they allow this is because their thought is when there's a flood, people want to stay in their house. When there's a flood, people aren't going to go to work, right? They're very happy to stay home, right? They don't want to go to their office or other place of employment. So this is an option only for a non-residential type of inland or one of those coastal back areas that we saw on the map graph. They are basically dry flood proofing, not wet as the other one. So this is where water is not allowed to go in. The foundation is sealed. They have gasketed doors. There is obviously some human intervention there. And this is why they don't want it in a house because it's not like a fail safe. So they feel if there is something that goes wrong here, at least it's just a business. Okay. So that is an option that a business can take. It's expensive. Floodway. Now we saw that floodway when that slide and it was the middle of the river. I just mentioned this because a lot of people get the grandiose idea to, they want to I say wharf out or put stuff in the water in that area, you have to do an engineering study. So you can't have any encroachments into a floodway unless you show no rise, meaning 0.0 rise to an engineering study. So if you see things coming in they're in the floodway, you should ask a lot of questions. It's also dangerous. It's a very high velocity flow area in a river to be in, that little channel in the middle, because the water starts ripping through there. I know it looks calm. I hear people say it all the time. Oh, it's a babbling brook, but when it gets running, it can be a dangerous area that'll knock you off your feet. So there is certain development that belongs in there, bridges and things, and there is a mechanism to change a map provision for things like that. But it's not an area to build a house or some kind of structure. Okay, so I guess the point is ask more questions. I mentioned this, the state building code back in October of 2018. State building code changed to the 2015 international residential code. We were behind a number of codes. So for flood, what did it do? Firstly, it added a foot to everything. So, you're at 2 feet, your reg, so that's cool. So you're already beyond this standard, but there are some towns where we had to get them to match up their zoning to building code. But the big thing was they started recognizing those coastal AE zones. Remember, it's those people in that limb zone. So it's the area right behind that V zone where there's still wave action. Those are now treated like a V zone. And that's important. You're going to see it in a second. But what does that mean? And I know you know it because here's the picture again. Okay. So it's those first two zones. You've got these areas, and you already know what it is. That fancy picture. So these are houses, the houses on stilts, the houses on piles, how you've seen these before. Breakaway walls or nothing underneath, no utilities, no finished rooms, that kind of stuff. You can have an elevator, but that'll probably increase your insurance. But this is what you get. So you've seen this before. Again, no fill under there. You want as free passage of water underneath the building as possible. And they're measuring the building from that the lowest joist there, the lowest horizontal structure, remember the bottom of it, not the top of it. So again, they want no impediment at all, okay? And it also has to be built by an engineer, stamped, and it has to do wind and water action on it. So it's both, okay? Not just water. Oh, geez, substantial improvement. Chris and I were just talking about this today. So obviously we have a lot of houses that were built a while ago, right? Probably we've got houses there from maybe the 1700s up until, last week. So people want to improve them. So a substantial improvement is a way to, and I know people hate it. We hate it too. It's hard to manage. But so what FEMA was thinking here was they knew there was all these old houses that existed before this program started in the 60s and 70s. How do we bring those into compliance? So this was the idea. So what they're saying here is any kind of addition or rehab or repair to done to a structure that costs more than 50% of its market value. So market value means usually just the value of the structure, not the land, because most of the value is in the land. And usually it's think of the town's tax appraisal, okay, of what it would be. So, again, you've got something usually that's somewhere between 100, 200, 300, somewhere in there, but depending on the house. Again, not the land. So once you say you're going to do an improvement and it's more than that. So let's just pick a number. The house is worth 100 grand and I want to put in an addition and a kitchen and I want to do this and I want to put a roof on it. So say that'll cost 60 grand. So now if 50 is your mark, 50 is half of 100. Now you've done a substantial improvement to the house. So what does that mean? So now that means when you do this, you have to bring the whole house into compliance for whatever zone and regulations apply. So again, if you're in a V zone, you're in a coastal AE zone, that means a house on piles. Again, could be a hard pill to swallow. A lot of people buy these houses and they don't realize these rules. historic structures can get a waiver from it, and some like existing code violations can also be, little bits of it can be waived. Market value, again, I know in I'm just going to concentrate on Old Saybrook. Market value is like the tax appraiser. And I think Chris said to me today, the person could get an independent appraisal, say that 10 times fast. But then it goes to the tax assessor to re-up your, fix your cards and getting the tax on it. But that's usually what people are using, is like your tax appraisal. I'm not going to go through all these. It's a lot of junk. If you if you want to really understand this, on the side there's a publication called the Substantial Improvement, Substantial Damage Desk Reference. You can Google it. It's online. It's not a very big document, but it gives you all the costs. Basically, the gist of it is everything's included on those. So anything bolted into the wall, structural, plumbing, electrical, it's gonna count. Okay. What's excluded? It looks like a lot, but it's mostly fees and like outdoor stuff, landscaping and things that are detached from the house, and plug-in appliances. So think of it, if you're selling the house, things you might take with you. So you wouldn't be things screwed into the wall, like a light fixture and stuff like that. That's something that's going to be counted. So that's how we kind of do it. And I'm not going to read it all to you. Cost estimates, again, they should be from a contractor, licensed on paper, itemized. The building official can look at them and dispute them and say, this is ridiculous. We've had that many times. You can't build that here for that. No way. And it's become a lot harder to do that to building officials and zoning officers post-pandemic due to the cost of labor and the cost of materials that have gone obviously very high. There was a lot of shenanigans. I'm going to say that before the pandemic, that people would try to, say, I'm going to build this addition for, 20 grand or something. Much harder to do now. Unfortunately, we see most projects now of any decent size are going to trigger this just due to the materials and labor costs. And so it's harder to play those games. This happens all the time. Usually, a lot of times, is some applicant will come in, see Chris, and talk about a project, and she'll go through all these rules, and then they'll go away, and she'll never hear from them again. And then she'll be driving her car down the street, and you'll look over and say, "What are you doing over there?" And they just decide to do the project without getting the permits, or their neighbors make a little, call. Hey, I wanted to do that and I never got a permit. How did they get one? Well, they didn't. So again, it becomes the same old things, violations, getting invoices, kind of doing a forensic file. Phase projects, I'll just mention this, is, what we tell towns is, when we realize people are going to play these games and try to phase things, if they can open up a permit and finish a project and then get a CO and still stay under the 50%, then okay, but we're not going to do half a roof, half a window, something like that. You have to have a full project if you're going to play that game again. Okay. Damage, and there's a picture of Old Saybrook at the bottom. I just realized that. That might have been in Irene or Sandy. Can't remember. Maybe Irene.
Irene.
Is it? Okay, there you go. Top is Cozy Beach. The other corporate, right? We always hear Cozy Beach, where they all like to go, the news people. Substantial damage. So damage is the same as improvement. It's kind of like sucked into that. So, and it says in the definition there, again, any origin. So think beyond flood. Fire is a big one. I know you've had fires down on the beach. That would count. So when you're putting it back together, if you're over that 50%, guess what? Going in the air. Other ones we've had is ice. We had a plane go into a building down. I live in Haddam, so down on the Connecticut River from the little airport at good speed, hit the house. I mean, it could be anything, any crazy act of God. Again, following a storm is when this really kicks in, as the pictures here are showing. We've got crazy damage. It's going to be hard to, you know, massage that away with a little paint and spackle, okay? And that's when, again, we're rebuilding it, we want you to now meet code or meet the new standard. Septic, Chris loves this topic. I was just reading right before this, a little article and another thing about how this is a big thing now. Septic systems can be really problematic. You know, in those riverine type areas or the areas a little bit farther away from the coast, those AE zones fill, you know, you gotta mound these systems a lot of times because you don't have good soil. They can screw around, they can be problematic with compensatory storage. Or when you're in a V zone, again, when you think of the house on stilts, you can't have any obstructions in the way. And these big fill mounds, which you often have, you know, are almost like a ramp right up into the building. Look, when I went back one, sorry about that. Why did I do that? And they also, the other big one is, you know, they're susceptible in those V zones to scour and coming out of the ground and then contamination because they, you know, again, it just is the case. So tough. I only mention is because you need a septic to live there. These often are problematic. And I think as time goes on with climate change and then everything, you know, it's going to be harder and harder sometimes to support a septic system and probably water wells too in some of these areas. So it's just something for you guys to think about when people come in. You know, how much time are some of these lots unfortunately going to have before, you know, you can't support. If you don't have water, if you have no septic, I don't know. And conflicting codes, you already know this. It's the land of many codes here. And you have zoning and building and sanitary and fire. And you always have to pick the strictest one. And sometimes you have to kind of balance them. And I believe it or not, this is the example I use is Dock and Dine, the old Dock and Dine. Not the new smoke on the water. I'm not even going to bring that up. I know all about it, unfortunately. I know it's a bad example. But that was an example when they were looking to rebuild it to code. They needed a fire staircase that did not break away. So, you know, because it's a restaurant, I said, you know what? I think we should be doing the fire code is the lead code here, not the flood code, because in a flood, nobody's going to be there, right? So you're gonna sometimes have to make concessions and what is like what I call the driver of the car. What makes the most sense? And in that sense, that was, you know, if it was a house, I would maybe say that. So you kind of have to use common sense sometimes, you know, in the land of people with no common sense sometimes. All right, last little bit, flood insurance. We're not going to go crazy with this. Just for, I know this isn't a slide, but I'm just going to give you a quick, I wrote it down. What's going on in town policy wise. Old Saybrook joined the National Flood Insurance Program in July of 1978. As of December of last year, end of last year, there was about 1,002 policies in town. Again, it goes up and down. You pay about 1.26 million in premiums. That's where everybody aggregated together who has insurance. It doesn't mean that's everybody who should have it. Just so you pay off your mortgage, you do what you want, you know how that goes. You've had 822 losses since 78, paying out over $15 million, you know, on those losses. Okay, that does not include disaster assistance. That's just flood insurance. I just might say that quick. So how does a policy look at what is a flood, first of all? And you could read it there. It's basically two pieces of land that are getting inundated by, you know, overland flood. One of them can be a road in your house, but it's got to be at least two, okay, or they won't pay. Next one. This one is a big one all the time. The difference between homeowners and flood insurance. So think of a hurricane or some kind of storm and your roof rips off and water falls into the house from the sky. Your homeowner's policy will cover that because it's from the sky. If you have a pipe or a sewage backup, usually your homeowner's policy will require like a rider, a separate little policy rider for that. Again, homeowners. So then water over the ground from a water course, a creek, a brook, the ocean, Long Island Sound. That's where flood comes in, and that's where you need a separate policy. Nobody's going to cover that. Next one. Okay, so remember we talked in the very beginning, it was 1968 and they started the program. Well, it's voluntary. And so when things are voluntary and an unfunded mandate, towns don't do it. I don't blame you. So for a number of years, they weren't participating. So Congress decided to enact the Flood Disaster Protection Act of 72. And so they tied insurance, the mandated insurance to a mortgage. So if you have a federal backed loan of any kind on property, which is almost every loan out there, and you are in that map floodplain, so think back to the map and the little blue blobs, right? You're in one of those zones, then mandatory purchase requirement comes in, and the lender is required by federal law to make you get flood insurance as a condition of the mortgage. They get fined, they get audited, and if they find that they're not doing it, they do get fined for, they go through their book of business every once in a while. So that became a lot of pressure to get into this program from banks and real estate agents to get people to join, because people can't sell property. Okay. It's just, it's a carrot and a stick, I guess. How much can they require? It's either the value of the building, the amount of the loan, or the maximum amount available. For a house, it's $250,000. Most of them do like the loan, like the lesser of it. Every once in a while, I hear somebody complain that they want something else. I'm like, well, here's the thing: when they hold your mortgage, they can do whatever they want to you. They can even make you get a flood insurance if you're not in the zone. So I've never heard that all these years. But again, it's like any bank. You want their money, they can give 100 hoops to go through. It's one here. We're getting to the end, I promise. Purchasing flood insurance, people think, oh, it's a pain, I gotta go to FEMA. You don't. You can just go to a normal company. If you go to floodsmart.gov, that website, it gives you a list of what they call write your own companies, or WYOs. And they're normal companies. They're your all states and that kind of stuff. And it's all the same. That's the other thing. You don't have to shop around. If you have a normal carrier and they write the flood, they're writing it in the government's name. Information, you are not, in other words, like you call car insurance every year to try to cheapen your rate. There really is no cheaper. The only thing you can do is like up your deductibles, but it's always going to be the same number because it's regulated by the government. So you don't have to call 12 people, 12 companies. There's a 30-day waiting period if you're just, randomly buying a new policy. If you have a mortgage closing, it's that day, bang, right? Again, those COBRA zones I mentioned before, those little Audubon areas, you cannot get insurance there. So that's why if you're building for some weird reason, a house, you are going to be doing it at your own dime. Nobody will give you probably a mortgage because you can't get insurance. But again, I don't think you're going to have that. That's a very small pool of people. There is private companies that sell private policies that are like mirror image of what a FEMA policy is. But again, they cherry pick. They don't want any past claims. They don't want any disaster assistance. They don't want you to be in a V zone. You're probably like but they do exist, and they can save you a little money, potentially. And their things are variable because it's their own policy and it's not mimicking the government. If that makes sense. All right, I'm not going to go through all these things either. If you want to know what a policy covers, go to this thing, summary of coverage, and it's a little brochure, and you can read it through very carefully if you really wanted to. All I need to know is there's two types of coverage: building and contents. Building means the guts of the building, the electrical and the foundation and all that kind of good stuff. And that's what a bank would require, a certain amount of building coverage. Contents is like your stuff. Bank doesn't care. So it's like a tack on. So that's how like your rate can be different. That's up to an individual. A bank won't require that. Okay. So again, you can see the items in there. It's a normal clothing and stuff like that. Okay. Risk rating 2.0. So from 68 till 2002, 2001 here, FEMA had a very simple rating system. And I'll show you the little criteria in a second. So, but over the years, people complained about it. They thought it wasn't fair, and a whole bunch of different complaints. So they had worked on this. They started a different type of rating system. This is what it's called, risk rating 2.0. If you are interested, again, Google it. There's many videos online, simplistic kind of videos to explain it. It uses a lot more data points. It uses a lot of commercial and federally data sets to kind of come up to a rate that's a little bit more individual to the property. New policies started to be rated this way last October in 2021, and renewed policies was this last April of 2022. The other thing too you have to realize is FEMA is still starting to kind of phase out any kind of grandfathering rules that were in place, and slowly go to more actuarial rates. So people's rates are rising. If you're someone of these, again, so think of substantial improvement. If you're one of these properties and it's from the 50s and it's still sitting on the ground, they're going to start, over time, like rating you as like you should be rated. So if you're supposed to be here, and you're down here and you're, 10 feet deep into the floodplain, you're going to start feeling that pain, a little bit each year. Okay. So you might be hearing that from people. So these are all, I'm not going to go read every one of these. These are all the new criteria into that new rating structure. There's like 10, I don't know how many things here. One of the big ones is the last one, cost to rebuild. That was to try to hit an affordability criteria. Example, I own a ranch. Chris owns a mansion. We shouldn't be paying the same rate. She should be paying more than me because I have a smaller house. So that was one way to address, and that was a complaint over the years. So these are all the factors that they're kind of trying to, the type of flood, are you coastal, are you inland, what kind of foundation you have, construction, that kind of stuff. This is what they used to use, these 5 things: data, construction, foundation, lowest floor, base flood elevation, and the flood zone on the map. Okay. So you can see there's a lot more data going into it now. Does it make it better? Well, probably a matter of opinion. Mitigation discounts, you're still getting discounts for those things like the vents, elevated machinery, and those dry flood proofed, for the commercial. They didn't take that away. They give you a little thing. So that's it. That's me. There I am. If you, again, Chris is usually probably your best resource because she knows the town. She talks to me constantly. And also your town engineer, Jeff Jacobson. But again, I'm always available to anybody for any questions, what have you. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to try to answer them. No, nothing.
Well, there's one in the question and answer.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Question.
It says, does that include washer and dryer garbage disposal?
Oh, okay. So does that mean like in the insurance part of it? Would insurance cover that, or do you mean it's another way? Let's go back. Let's go back. Hold on. Hold on. We're gonna go back. Okay, like this one?
Yeah.
You mean like, would they pay if it got damaged? Would they pay to fix it? Is that what you're saying?
We're not sure. The question was in the chat. We just read it to
Oh.
you.
Okay.
Chuck, are you there?
I'll assume that's the question. If it was like I would say like a built-in garbage disposal dish, the dishwasher, and you had building coverage, it would be covered.
Oh, he just said this, that add to the 50%.
Oh, okay. I would say yes. So I'll give you the example. Again, you have to really look at these. So now remember, we all know there's people out there, in the weekend painting their houses and stuff, and that's not what we're trying to do here. So if they're coming in for a permit and it's a kitchen renovation, right? And they're going to renovate their entire kitchen. And within that description of everything they're doing, they're putting in a new sink with a garbage disposal. Yeah, it counts. If they're the dishwasher, so let's go back to 50%. You don't care about insurance. You're looking for, let's go back a few. The dishwasher might be something you could exclude because it's kind of a plug-in appliance. That makes sense. Let's see. Might even have said it here. Let's see. Built-in appliances, again, that could be maybe excluded because you can't like unplug it. Again, that would depend. At that point too, what we'd say is, you know, if you're paying somebody to do the whole room, I'm in my kitchen right now, so I keep pointing at it. You know, and part of it is the paint, and you're hiring somebody to do that, you know, that's part of the cost. If you're out at the weekend wearing your paint in your bathroom, who's gonna know? You know, that we're not gonna track down every little person. But if the whole point of it is to, if you know, you're fixing your window pane, you know, Chris isn't gonna come out and find you in the middle of the night, or neither am I. But when you're doing a project and you're coming into town hall for a permit and you have to list out all these things, then it counts. You know, does that make sense? I hope it does. It's not to penalize people for fixing little, you know, things that we're never going to track, you know, but if you're supposed to come in for a permit for it, then that's when it counts. Hope that helps.
Yep.
All right, more here. There's water and okay, I think I got it. The 50% rule does have nuance, and you know, and that's why kind of I'm here to help towns, and we work through that. I'll give you an example of one today in Westport. Commercial building, inland, has a cell tower on top of it. Do we count the cell phone tower as part of the market value? So there's all these weird nuances to substantial improvement. You can get into weird and wacky questions, you know, either on the costs, on the value, that kind of. And we decided it would count after we talked. A lot of times too, if we don't know, I call FEMA. Like if Chris has a question, I go, I don't know either. Really. That's a good one. You know, I call them, and a lot of times they're looking at data from around the country to see if there's a comparable, that makes sense, comparable situation, comparable something. Or in New England, I have a counterpart of me in every state, and then especially in New England. So we are Region 1 New England. So I tend to reach out to the people in the other New England states because we're very similar in Vermont and, you know, whatever. We kind of pull often to on questions. Just things. There you go. Any more questions? Let's see. I think that's it.
I think that's it. Thank you, Diane.
Thank you.
Sorry
Thank you.
for the
Thank
rocky
you.
start, but we got through it.
I know, and we made it by 8 o'clock. I thought I was gonna look down and see 10 o'clock. Ah.
All right, anyone else? Or-
Get that.
So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take the video and we're gonna save it to that land use education library. So we put it under the land use department. So there's training on gateway, there's training on CAM, there's training on freedom of information, and then this one will go up on there too. Training on what a planning commission does. So slowly, we're just gonna keep recording them and saving them. And then we can use them as an educational reference. So I think there's another question.
And we can access them at any time.
You can go home and access them right now.
We should say thank you.
And do we get credit for attending this 40 hours?
I believe it counts towards your hours. So this is an elective credit. So you have to do 2 housing credits and 2 elective credits. Carl and I had put together and Carl wrote a letter, but I put together a little email, and then we just took down everybody's name. So we'll just, we'll try to track it as much as we can, but if you attend something else that we're not aware of, so you go to the Connecticut Bar Association or some other, you take the Yukon Clear map training course, then you'll just need to notify us, but when it's a group like this and we're all together,
Is this annually, you have to do X
Yeah.
amount of hours?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's annual.
How
yes,
many hours?
4 total.
or,
4 hours a year,
Mhm.
no big deal.
yeah, and then 2 of them have to be fair housing and so forth, so I figure towards the end of the year, if we don't have the credits, then what we can do is maybe have someone come in and speak, because if we have new members coming on and with the elections and things like that, and then, you know, it changes too for when people get appointed, and so Carl sent the memo to you, and attached to that, he had the CCM guidance on what we're supposed to be doing, so I figure the more we can get done now, the easier it'll be for everyone.
Continuing ed for realtors, could we have fair housing? Will that come also?
It might, I probably would, I didn't really think about it that way.
So a lot, there's some overlap.
Yeah.
In different subjects.
Does the 4 hours of the bar course
The bar association, the all-day seminar covers everything,
year?
Do alternates also have to?
yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Diane, thank you again
you.
for coming.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Have a good night.
And any feedback would be great, because as Chris said, you know what, she got me now. I've had a cog also contact me this week, so I feel like I'm gonna be doing this a lot. So if there is things on here that could be better, you know, maybe just give it to Chris, and I'm happy to, so the next person gets a better, because I feel like I'm gonna be doing this from now to the end of time. For all this training, I get it. I know the requirement is there, and you know, I don't know if they thought this through really, to dump of work all this on everybody, but that's okay. The other thing too, I'll just mention this, if you really are interested in this topic, if you Google, again, a lot of Googling here, Iowa State University Extension, I think, has a bunch of videos on each of these topics. It's more inland, it's not coastal because it's Iowa. But, you know, it's like, you know, a 5-minute video on like maps, 5 minutes on regs, da, da, da. So if you just, for some reason, want to do that too, I mean, I know it doesn't count, so I know, you know, whatever, but you're looking for your credits. But if you're interested and you have time, and again, it's short, and they have one on like, I think there's like 10 videos or something. So you don't have to do them all in one shot. But I just mentioned that because it's out in the world, and they're pretty good. You know, well, deeper into each of these topics before what I did. That's all.
You just go to the participants for a second. Oh, we had a caller. I don't know who the phone caller was, if they were here for credit, so. Anyway, okay, we'll figure it out.
Are also
Okay,
required
so I think we're
training.
all set.
Yep.